The year is 2008. I am 13 in 8th grade, and my best friend and I have a hyperfixation on a short-lived but girl group. Though he was closeted at the time and the door was glass, one of the things that we always talked about is how much we love a bad bitch. And I think that is one of the things that brought us together. And so it does seem like only him and I hold on to this rather obscure memory of a short-lived spin-off of sorts of the Pussycat Dolls by the name of Girlicious. If you don't remember Girlicious, you are the average person. Honestly, I don't think many people outside of Canada had ever heard of them at all. If you're Canadian and still don't know who they are, that also doesn't surprise me because, again, they weren't huge. They were pretty niche to the degree that what kind of inspired this video is my friend going back and forth about like, yeah, there's definitely a whole lot of people remember Girlicious. And I had to assure him, no. The average person does not remember Girlicious. Now, if you're too young to remember the music phenomenon Pussycat Dolls, that saddens me, but I'm also 30. And apparently Docha is 20 years old now. If you don't know who the Pussycat Dolls were, they were a very, very popular girl group collaboration thing. It was a bunch of members, but the only one that sung was Nicole Scherzinger. So I always call Pussycat Dolls Nicole and the Others or Nicole and them. The Pussycat Dolls were actually created by a creative director slash choreographer by the name of Robin Antin. The group was actually a underground burlesque show that would ultimately be signed to a major record label and would become what we know as the Pussycat Dolls. And in the midst of their fame and fortune, we'll get to that. In the midst of their popularity, Robin Antin would take on many projects off of the Pussycat Dolls name. And Girlicious would be her second major attempt at recreating the magic, capturing lightning in a bottle the way that they did with Pussycat Dolls. And Girlicious was her sister group of that. They were originally formed in the second season of a reality show based off of the Pussycat Dolls called The Pussycat Dolls Presents Girlicious. First season was them looking for an extra doll. They ended up picking some girl, I think her name was Alexa or Alex, Asia. It doesn't matter. She performed with them like once and then said no. And that was probably the smartest thing you could have did, bitch. Anyway, and then the second season, they were making a whole new group. Hence the creation of Pussycat Dolls Presents Girlicious. It was a TV show slash reality competition slash singing dancing competition in which hopeful girls, and I use that word particularly, everyone was very young, came from all over the US to participate in the newest and hottest girl group, which is sad considering, again, you've probably never heard of them. But today, I wanted to go into the winding, overlapping, confusing cluster that is the Girlicious group, as well as the world before and after and during that, to kind of understand more about this little niche thing that I felt the need to go into a rabbit hole about, as per usual. Eventually, it'll lead us down the rabbit hole of Robin Antin and her foolishness, as well as PCD, and finish with a good old Where Are They Now, which may be perhaps the most unexpected turn of this story. It's a story of sex, exploitation, drama, drugs, scandal, betrayal, and music that is pretty good, pretty okay. It's good for the time period. It's pretty catchy, actually. This is the story of Girlicious and much, much more. But first, hi, it's Kendall here. New around here, welcome. Not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? If you like my eyeshadow, it is from an eyeshadow palette called Tones of Turd. This is not the sponsor of today's video. I just think it's very funny. Each shadow is inspired by some form of poop or poop related phenomenon. Can you see that? That was turtle heading. I like turtle heading, plugged up. Corny surprise is nice. Triple flush. I like all the shimmers. Dump and dazzle. Baby poop is a particularly beautiful corny yellow. They also have the same version of this palette that doesn't have poop names if you're boring. So that's what you know what's on my eyes before you bug me. And with that said, I'm gonna send you over today's sponsor so I can buy dumb shit like that, I guess. Hello everyone. This is Admiral Kenny, and today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit delivery service that offers fresh, delicious, healthy meals delivered straight to the comfort of your own home. Pre-portioned, pre-thought out, pre-shopped for, with easy-to-follow recipe cards that gets the meal on the table in about 30 minutes, often less than that. I was able to get today's beef bowl noodle situation in my gullet within 20 minutes because I was not messing around. If you're new to cooking, it's a great way to learn with step-by-step recipe cards, full color so that you know everything you got to do. Or if you're like me, a little bit of an OG in this here cooking game, you can customize things, add more, take more away, start using the air fryer where one wasn't called for, and you can get whatever was 30 minutes probably down to like a hot 15 if you believe in yourself and a little rash. Live life on the edge. They have delicious add-ons like pre-cooked proteins, desserts, breakfasts. And speaking of which, if you would like to try out HelloFresh, you can go to my link down below or the QR code floating around my noggin so that you can get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life if you use code KennieFM. That's 1 free meal per box with active subscription. That's 1 free meal per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New or returning subscribers only, varies by plan. Big thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery. Though there are no lack of reality shows these days, I think it's a completely other animal if you consider the mid-2000s and early 2000s of cable television. A lot of these shows still exist today, but are just like shells of their former selves. You had like Survivor, American Idol, Big Brother, America's Next Top Model, Fear Factor, Flavor of Love, RuPaul's Drag Race, etc., etc. And within the wave of reality competition shows, there existed this little show, short-lived, off of CW called PCD Presents. Again, as I mentioned in the introduction, they had a first season where they were looking for an extra doll, but after that concluded, they had the plans to make a brand new, super sexy girl group called Girlicious. Horrible name. Let's just start there. This show would bring hopeful girls from all across the US from ages 18 to 25 to audition to be in the next big girl group. The creator of said group, Antin, would say that originally the group was planned to be 3 members that was very, very sexy, but ultimately would have more of an urban twist on the original Pussycat Dolls concept, which was more burlesque. This would be PCD, but drop them in Atlanta. I have always liked to describe their aesthetic as well as their music, especially from their first album, a lot like Slutty Brats complimentary. Kind of sporty, multiracial, edgy, black, because, you know, that makes it edgy, but with a pop R&B vibe. And again, their music was very Slutty Brats as well. If you've ever listened to Bratz music, unironically, good shit. The Bratz Forever Diamonds album, what was the one that they were appropriating Indian people? Because I don't think a single Bratz was Indian. The song's bust, okay? Can you handle my style? Can you handle my attitude? So speaking of American Idol, the show was very much so American Idol meets Making the Band. There were like a top 15 girls that would be invited into a house where they would all compete against each other in themed challenges from week to week. The themes would be kind of general, like confidence, sexiness, style. And someone would be judged and eliminated, sometimes more than one eliminated, weekly based off of those challenges, supposedly. Now, when the show came on, I was aware of it, hence why I listened to Girlicious, but I did not give a less about watching the reality show. I could not muster less of a to watch that show. I was never a huge competition reality show girl as a child. I had no interest in that, but I did end up seeing their first music video and I was like, it's giving Slutty Brats. I'm kind of with it. It's giving Brats. So they got me once the band was already formed. And between challenges, they live together, they fight each other, they beef with each other, they have jealousy and sabotage. And it was a mess, as you'd imagine, coming out of the reality show space of 2007, but nothing near as messy as its predecessors. And perhaps that's why it kind of got lost in the tidal wave of reality TV. Now, like I said, I hadn't watched the show, so I have watched the entire show for the purpose of this video. And let me tell ya, I didn't need to watch it back then, but it does supplement some of the information that we have now in hindsight, given the band has been broken up for like 15 years. The show began filming in 2007, and the first few episodes is the rendering down of contestants. The first few things I noticed, as I mentioned before, everyone is incredibly young. The oldest person outside of Robin and her people that help her do this, the oldest contestant is 25, and they treat her like she's on the brink of death.
But I am a little bit older, I'm 25. So I really do feel like maybe this is my last shot to be in like a girl group. So actually being here right now and with a chance to win this competition is a huge, huge dream.
This is my last chance. This is my last chance. And it's like, damn, bitch, you giving up at 25? Shit, you ain't about to die. You don't even have a formed frontal lobe yet. Girl, calm down. Anyway, the show ages generally better than other reality shows that came out around this time. For instance, I'm thinking of America's Next Top Model, which was a war crime on them girls. Holy shit. I'm not the first person to bring that up, but like, there's nothing like watching America's Next Top Model, them fat shaming girls who are 132 pounds, and then shaving a girl bald just to kick her off the next week. Heinous shit. But there are definitely remnants of its time period in the final product. For instance, this girl, this one, that they're trying to refer to as, quote, plus sized.
Definitely hard being one of the bigger girls here.
Y'all. Whenever I see some shit from this time period, it pisses me off. Because as a 13-year-old girl who was very body conscious, I didn't stop being so body conscious before I'd say the last like 5 years of my life. So the formative years of my life, I have felt like shit about my body. And part of the reason why is because on TV, they're looking at this bitch who was easily 50 pounds less than I weighed, and I'm sitting there like, damn, they calling her a cow. I had no ability to perceive myself, and I blame television for that. Assholes, piece of shit. So whenever I see this shit, it just makes me hot. It pisses me off. Anyway, week to week, the girls train with professionals, being vocal coaches, choreographers, and other industry professionals, to perform weekly for judges to show that they have what it takes: the singing, the dancing, the stamina, the stage presence to be in a girl group, and the professionalism, which I think is pretty notable considering there were a lot of instances of girls that, spoiler, show came out 18 years ago, but not to spoil it for you, some of the girls that end up in the final group were really unprofessional. Again, they were 18, 19 years old, so yeah, but like, it's crazy how that work, right? So it's like, is it based off of your capabilities and your ability to work well in a group, or is it just because we saw who we wanted in the group anyway and we just did all this rigmarole for nothing? There's an instance with one of the contestants named Natalie that comes to mind off the top of my head, who ends up popping off with the vocal coach. And I'm like, and they kept her on the show at this time period? That's interesting. That's interesting. They would have called you unprofessional and kicked your ass out on America's Next Top Model and then shaved you bald afterwards. Send you out, shave you bald. But nope, she stays in the house. Makes it to the group even. Spoiler again. But all of these girls have these dreams, goals, ambition to be a star. And according to Robin, every week, your dream is at the very tips of your fingers, which means that they will do anything, show that they want it even more than the girl next to them. And as you can imagine, that makes things get very, very messy and catty and competitive because we needed it for TV and misogyny, but potato. So in between performances, they would live together in the home, and very quickly rivalries and alliances would form.
I can't even pick on these girls. All I know that is that I'm so glad we got her on her own.
which creates its own particular tension once everyone is chosen, right? Because you've now seen them in a reality show where these bitches hate each other, and either they got over their differences by the time they get in the group itself, or they just hate each other, and we have to see them perform on tour and shit. Both of which can be interesting, I'd imagine. But yes, as you can imagine, there's a lot of drama, a lot of competitiveness, because it's all these women that want this very specific thing, but also they're, like I said, mostly children. They're all like, the majority are late teens, early 20s.
I'm over here and I hear you running your mouth about, oh, these bitches did this and that. You never said it in my face.
And they're being told that they're fighting for their dreams, for fortune and fame, and that they're doing this to get the attention of world-class, successful industry professionals. And so they argue a lot. And over dumb shit. They argue over boots.
I want to borrow your boots, like, yeah, but you have to understand, like, we were all told to bring our own stuff. Are you really that scared that we better just because I'm wearing boots?
Really, and if this affects your performance, then maybe you don't want to be here. Nobody told me, hey, Natalie, pack boots for Charlotte. So I told her no.
Or who can use the phone to call their families, over challenges, over who was being too slutty during the sexy challenge.
You were on the floor. You were on the floor. Everybody that was on the floor rolling around with some man. Y'all don't even know. Whenever this man's touching your stuff and you're popping your pelvis.
That was stupid. Over everything. And then they end up meeting with their judges every week. Those judges being the chairman of Geffen Records, which is division of Interscope, Ron Fair, Little Kim, right? The is she doing there? I don't know what she has to do with a girl group, but go off, queen. She is very famous in the industry. She was just doing shit around this time, I guess. I remember, was it the late 2000s she started doing shit with K-pop? She did a song with VIII. My second gen, maybe even first gen bitches know what I'm talking about. Who VIII is. Maybe not the song that VIII did with Little Kim, but I know that wasn't a fever dream. I know I didn't make that up. But she's one of the judges. And the last judge, of course, being Robin Antin. It's pretty clear from the jump that the show felt like a formality. It was pretty clear, again, regardless of how many people did well during the show, won challenges, surprised the others with their capability. It was pretty clear that they were going to pick who they wanted to pick from the jump. Again, I mentioned popping off with the team. There were girls that ended up in the final project that were very inconsistent. And there were also those who just didn't sound good. They sounded bad, but they ended up there because they had something that they thought was a je ne sais quoi for the final group. And so it feels kind of fraudulent to bring all these girls out there knowing you've already looked at a few people and decided who you wanted, right? So, like I said, alliances will be formed, and two of the people that end up having an alliance are Natalie and Christina. These two become very close platonic friends.
Since day one, Christina and I have been really good friends. She's one of the people I'm just like keeping my eye on, like, girl, you good. I'm gonna be your friend.
Who take bubble baths together. Just close platonic friends. Lighting candles and having platonic soaks in platonic bubble baths together. But they got along, I think, partially because of their relationship to Christ, which will come up later. It's weird. We'll get to that. Because spoiler, one of them is very anti-gay right now. But another thing they had in common is that they were very inconsistent, both of them. Natalie, very pretty girl, gorgeous girl, really stunning. And she was a very good dancer. She had a good performing aura, but the whole time she was very inconsistent. It wasn't so bad that you couldn't fix it in like post-production with some auto-tuning and some playing around with engineering, but she wasn't like off the bat gonna be singing great live. That was not her talent. That was not her stride, Christina, though she had a better voice, just seemed to struggle throughout the entire show to get her stride. She either had one week that she was doing very well vocally, but not so great performance-wise, or vice versa. She wasn't very good at any of the challenges. She sucked at PR training. She sucked at dancing sometimes, and then other times she was better. She was just up the whole time. She was a big question mark through the entire show. But spoiler, they had her anyway. And as we'll learn later, she knew she was entering the group the entire show. So maybe that's part of the reason why they just kept overlooking her up. There's a lot of maybes around that. Anyway, so by the time we get to the end of the show, it's pretty clear that they're gonna make room for Natalie and Christina anyway. They want them in there. So by the time we get to the finale, they get rid of the last girl that's not gonna be in the group. Her name was Charlie, who was 19 at the time. And I honestly think they got rid of her because she said, if this don't work out, I'm gonna go back to school. Why wouldn't she? I guess they thought she wasn't committed enough. You. But by the end of the show, we would have 4 members instead of 3. If you recall earlier, they said they were going to do 3, but they decided to fudge the rules and get 4 girls in there. So the group will be made of Natalie, who would essentially be made into the rapper, sort of, Christina, Nicole, and Tiffany. Now, I haven't mentioned Tiffany or Nicole yet. Nicole, of them all, seems to be very, very chill. Throughout the show, she was kind of just minding her own business. And now listening to their music and watching the show as an adult, I definitely think that she was the most polished singer and performer. She was good. She was seen like the one that was the most ready for this. Her voice is very clear and unique. Yeah, and I just found myself becoming a bit of a fan of Nicole. There was also Tiffany, and Tiffany was a lot more dramatic in the house. Part of me wonders if that was actually how she was, or if that was production, or if that was racism in the edit, or a mixture of all 3 of those things. Because they do really present her as a very over-the-top person, and being that she is the only member that would be dark-skinned, something feels icky about that to me. But as far as throughout the show, she got a lot of praise. She was basically christened the best singer of the entire show. She would be the 2nd person added to the group, with Nicole being first, if I recall correctly. And they kind of just likened her to a Jennifer Hudson vocal powerhouse. And I did not agree. And as an adult, I still don't agree. I found her voice kind of grating, to be quite frank with you. Maybe she would have been better as a solo artist, but she kind of stands out in a way that can kind of with the flow of a song made by a group. But as we'll see, I actually love the career turn that she takes later, so it's fine. But she is a great performer, if not a bit over the top. Like, that was the criticism she would get a lot during the show. You're a little too much. She was definitely the girl that was doing way too many runs, and it's like, it's a group, baby. We're supposed to harmonize. That's not how that bitch was. Let's do member profiles, shall we? Nicole Cordova. She was born in Virginia, but had parents in the Navy, so she kind of went all over the place. But they settled in Houston when she was 9, and she has a background in ballet. Again, she was pretty to herself throughout the entire show and seemed to just keep peace and focus on the goal, which is becoming a part of the group. She wasn't really there to make enemies or seemingly friends either. She was just like, I can sing and dance, put me in the group. I like her. Tiffany Anderson, 18, born in Los Angeles. Tiffany was the 2nd to join the group in the finale. She was an obvious favorite for the judges, calling her a natural performer, a natural singer, if not needing some help to control herself in an attempt to blend with the other members. Again, pretty catty in the house, but no more, I would say, than anyone else. But she did fight and or instigate fights during filming, which again, these are a bunch of children in a house together that are in a very odd, high tension environment. That doesn't surprise me. Natalie Meja, 19. Originally from Diamond Bar, California, she was a part of 2 groups prior to joining the show. One called Cherry and the other called Breathe. I don't know shit about either of them. Couldn't find any videos from either of them. I don't know if they technically existed in any like formal way. That's what an article said when I looked her up. So now during the show, there is a part in which she says pretty explicitly that her family grew up with nothing.
My grandmother, she's lived in poverty her whole life. You know, my mom has lived in poverty her whole life. So I'm doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for my family. I feel like I'm carrying the world on my shoulders. I feel like I'm carrying my family on my shoulders.
And I feel like that was worded in a very particular way. Her family grew up with nothing, because as you see, if you look at all into her history, there's a lot of information about them not particularly struggling. Like, her stepfather had connections in the music industry. He had his own studio. She's from a place called Diamond Bar, California. It don't sound broke in Diamond Bar, California. But I do get the sense that either she decided or production decided that they should pull a Jennifer Lopez and claim that she's just a Latina who's trying to make her, you know, who's running around with crazy hair on the block. Jennifer Lopez ain't for no damn block. But I get the sense that they kind of wanted her to be like, I'm from the rough streets of Latinaville, and I'm here to be saucy and sexy and whatever, all that racist shit. Again, gorgeous girl, wasn't particularly subtle about it on the show. This admittedly resulted in some very quotable lines where she is pretty much the diva of the show, basically calling everyone else ugly but her and Christina, which is really f***ed up, but sometimes could be funny. But there was a tinge of anti-blackness because it was particular as we whittled things down that she thought Tiffany was in the like unattractive category, which is crazy. Tiffany is a gorgeous girl. F off. And last, but most perplexingly, we have Christina Sayers, 20. She would actually say later, years later, that she actually lowered her age for the show. So on the show, it says that she's 19, but she was actually 20. And I haven't found any particular information on why she decided to lower her age by a year, but Sayers said that she did that on her own YouTube channel. So I'm going to assume that's the case. She grew up in San Diego and was adopted by a family there. Her uncle is a former NFL running back for the Chicago Bears. His name is Gale Sayers. And of all the members, I would say Christina is the most vocal about her time in the group and her life since the group in general. And in some ways, that's a good thing. And in others, I really wish she would shut the f up. And just like that, Girlicious was formed. And in January 2008, their first album, self-titled Girlicious, was released. And absolutely nowhere in the United States. For some reason, they got really strongly pushed in Canada, and they actually found some form of success there. I don't know why they were pushed so much in Canada. I don't know if it was something to do with the record company or just general politics behind the scenes, the industry. I don't know. But basically, they didn't get pushed at all in the US, but ended up going platinum in Canada. Peaking at number 2 for album sales. They would win a Much Music Award for Most Watched Video Like Me, and got second with their other video, Stupid Shit. Speaking of which, let's talk about the first album. Obviously, I'm talking about this incredibly obscure girl group years after they came out with their first album. So obviously, it had bangers. It is 15 years later, more than 15, 15? 17 years, oh, it's 17 years later. Wow. Okay. It's 17 years later. And if they didn't bang, we wouldn't be here. Had a boxing theme for their first video, Like Me. They put the blonde white girl, Nicole, in dookie braids for their song Baby Doll. And I've made fun of her ever since. The entire time since the first time I saw that video, I was like, why did he put her in dookie braids? Good song, but I've been roasting her since I was 13. Liar Liar featuring Flo Rida was pretty good. Stupid Shit grew on me, but I really hated the music video, and I hate it equally now as an adult. The video was awful, but the song grew on me. Let's do some stupid shit. Yeah, let's get dirty, dirty. Yeah, let's go do some stupid shit. I owe you one. Radio, do about it. Now what you gonna do about it? You got me, you got me, you got me. I know you really like a boy. Now you really get a boy. So good, so hood, so fly. Okay, I'm stopped. If you've never listened to this album, because I'm sure I just hit you with obscurity for a lot of y'all, I highly recommend going to listen to it. I found that they put their first album on Spotify/Apple Music, so check it out. It's very 2008, but I like it. I'll just say that one of my issues with Girlicious was not the music, okay? The music was good, and again, very much so music of its time. It had very Atlanta production, jazzy fizzle, product shizzle. It was obviously black inspired, and that's why I side-eye how hard they were going for Tiffany, because I don't think they liked Tiffany that much. I think they just needed an unambiguously black person to justify making this group. Honestly, that's how I've always wondered. But anyway, but yeah, so it wasn't the music. So what was the issue? What happened? They were starting to get a little bit of traction, at least in Canada. What's going on? I think if we are to attempt to answer that question, we have to look over at the beginning and look at the creator of Girlicious, aka the creator of Pussycat Dolls, Robin Antin, and kind of smell the smoke around the probable fire that is Robin Antin. Because, spoiler, the bitch sucks. allegedly, and according to my opinions about it. So Robin Antin has been the looming figure around Girlicious as well as Pussycat Dolls. Pussycat Dolls more so. But I don't think I really understood how f***ed up this woman's business practices were until I started looking into Girlicious, and while looking into Girlicious, I had to look into Pussycat Dolls and then other groups that came out after Girlicious. Follow me. So in order to talk about that, we have to start with the Pussycat Dolls. Not the girl group, but the choreographed burlesque show that was originally formed in 1995. For those of you that did not know, the Pussycat Dolls was not originally a music act. It was actually a dance act. It was a burlesque show in an underground club co-owned by Johnny Depp by the name of the Viper Room. It was formed when Robin would become friends with actress Christina Applegate, and they would actually end up being roommates, small world, and they kind of concocted an idea together to start doing shows and invite other celebrities to come see the shows at the Viper Room to get more attraction for the group. Robin was a choreographer, so this was a dance group, and it got really, really popular in the local scene. It became sort of a talk of the town where every celebrity wanted to participate in the Viper Room's production, the Pussycat Dolls. They would have guest performers like Gwen Stefani and Christina Aguilera when she was in her dirty era, when she was wearing skirts that were belts because she had no ass, because people weren't allowed to have ass in 2001. What the f? It was illegal to have ass at that time. And she had the skunk highlights, lowlights, skunk stripes. I don't know. Wanna get dirty? I know a lot of people my age said that that was when they realized they were bisexual. That was when I realized I wanted to be a bad bitch. I wanted to be all my life I've dreamt to be in I'm sorry. Eventually, Robin would get the attention of Interscope president Jimmy Iovine, or was he a head executive? I don't know. Jimmy Iovine. And they would come together to convert the group from just a dance troupe into a music and money-making venture. This would be in the early 2000s when the music industry was kind of losing its mind because they were losing a lot of money because of the emergence of peer-to-peer sharing websites like Napster, LimeWire. Do kids even know what Napster and LimeWire are? Before Spotify, Apple Music, and such streaming services, people would steal music song by song instead of buying the entire album. That took a big hit to the music industry because prior to that, they made most, if not all, of their money through people buying the entire album. Physical album, either a CD. Earlier than that, there were cassette tapes, vinyls, physical music. The music industry is panicking, right? And so in the midst of this particular confusion, Robin and Jimmy Iovine come up with the first 360 deal.
They created Pussycat Dolls Incorporated, where Robin Antin would own 50% of the company and Interscope would own the other 50%. Basically, the manager, Robin, and record label, Interscope, who have complete ownership and benefit the most monetarily.
360 deals are pretty standard. It's a very standard predatory practice in the music industry, but at the time, this was completely novel. Prior to this, record companies would make their money off of album sales primarily, but this would be the beginning of earning a percentage on kind of everything that the artist does. So whether that be album sales, of course, but also tours, appearances, merchandise, endorsements, publishing income, distribution, any company or business ventures that would have, in this context, the name PCD. Basically, you're not just signing an artist to make music, you are signing your entire career to this record label. So as you can imagine, sounds like a predatory context for making art. We're gonna exploit the f out of these people. And exploit they did. Robin and Interscope would own Pussycat Doll Inc. and would employ the members of Pussycat Dolls as cast members or castmates.
The label and the brand Pussycat Dolls were in a partnership together, and they basically would do all the deals. I was a cast member in the Pussycat Dolls. As far as like us being in the driving seat of what gigs we were doing and how much we were making, I definitely wasn't in those conversations.
So because of that, they had no rights as artists. They had no say in how much money they were making, how much of that money they would actually see. And so these bitches wasn't making shit.
Did you make any money out of it?
No,
Not a whole lot. So everybody would think that you would be getting a percentage of the record sales.
I definitely should be in a different tax bracket, let's just be honest.
Mind you, these were one of the most popular music acts of that time period. Millions and millions and millions of dollars undoubtedly made through their hard work. And they saw basically none of that. The only person that made something was Nicole. Again, Nicole and them. But even she wasn't compensated nearly what she would have been deserving of, considering she was the only person singing in the entire group, even though there was another member who wanted to sing. They didn't let her. They were like, nah, this is Nicole doing the whole album. The only people that were making any money were Robin, the record label, and probably some managers, but that was about it. They weren't making shit. So eventually, the sheer amount of work they were forcing these women to go through, with seemingly very little reward, would cause fractures in the group, as you'd imagine. Again, the only person who really sang anything was Nicole Scherzinger, even though Melody, the black girl in the group, wanted to sing. She was added to the group as a singer. She did not have a background in dance like the other members did. So she wanted to sing, but they didn't really let her do anything but a ad-lib here or there. And those fissures in the group started to become more and more public facing. If you're old enough to remember, in like 2009, Melody came out on stage live at the AMAs. Everyone's used to just seeing Nicole sing. Nobody else sing. You see Melody come out, she start yelling, loosen down my burdens, baby. Oh, say what you gonna do to me. As you can imagine, it was pretty apparent that something's going on there because someone wanted their moment and honestly deserved her moment. They all deserved their moment. They was working hard as like, all jokes aside, imagine working day in, day out, sleepless, touring, having to sleep in a bus, dieting, practicing, dancing, singing, interviewing, dealing with bandmates, dealing with people in the industry. And you're doing all that, and best case scenario, you're Nicole Scherzinger, who is also not making enough money and is also being incredibly exploited. And as you can tell by my frustration, that's pretty f***ed up. And here we got Robin and her bangs and face Jimmy Iovine making all the money from all of their work. They're just the workhorses of them just sitting there and scratching their ass. So as you can imagine, that's not a sustainable environment to work in. So members started dropping like flies, left, right, and center. They was just leaving one after another, each of them going off to do their own solo projects. First was Melody, the black girl. And then the other ones would slowly start to drop around Nicole, because ultimately they wanted to finally have their careers in their own hands. So you may be saying, Kendall, you just did a Pussycat Dolls side tangent. What does that have to do with Girlicious? Now, like I said, Girlicious is the second group from Robin Antin, the second attempt to build off of the Pussycat Dolls model. And she would learn a bit from the Pussycat Dolls and the issues that arise with that to go into Girlicious and other bands. Again, we'll get to that in a bit. But for the most part, I think it's pretty safe to say that if the biggest group that Robin Antin made had just as much, if not more misfortune than the groups that she had after that, I think it's safe to say that all of her groups felt some level of this type of exploitation, but just didn't get the fame from it. The other people didn't get any money from it either. So I'd imagine these other groups that weren't as popular got even less money. So they were getting exploited for nothing. Also, with the addition of some 2020 vision hindsight information, it can explain how Robin Antin's business models were kind of a foundation for exploitation with the face of like girl power, you know? And I think it would be safe to say that PCD created a sort of framework that she used for all of her subsequent girl groups, because each one was like a different type of pussycat doll. There was the urban pussycat dolls. There were the European pussycat dolls. There was the pussycat dolls, but everyone sings pussycat dolls. So I wouldn't be surprised if they also suffered a comparable amount of exploitation, but they probably made even less money than the Pussycat Doll members did. But that's neither here nor there. Oh no, that is here. That's very much so here, because that goes into Girlicious felt a version of the exploitation of Pussycat Dolls, because also there's allegations that her predation continued into groups that were after Girlicious. So I highly doubt she was stopped just for Girlicious. She had one of the most notable instances of of a public criticism of Robin and her ways in which she works people in these groups actually came out from a former PCD member. Her name is Kaya Jones. She didn't end up in the final group, but she was in like earlier promotion photos, so she was going to be a part of it. But around 2017, in the conversation of the Me Too movement, she actually came out, accused Robin Antin of being sort of a den mother that broke them down and essentially prostituted them. She would clarify that she doesn't mean she was a madame per se. She wasn't physically forcing people to have sex, but there was a culture around her and her work in which it was pretty clear that, according to Kaya, allegedly, there was this air that Robin presented that if you want success, you will have sex with XYZ person. On October 13th, 2017, Kaya Jones would go to Twitter and say, "My truth, I wasn't in a girl group. I was in a prostitution ring. Oh, we happened to sing and be famous while everyone who owned us made the money. To be a part of the team, you must be a team player, meaning sleep with whoever they say. If you don't, they have nothing on you to leverage." Yes, I said leverage, meaning after they turn you out or get you hooked on drugs, they use it against you. Correct. Victimizing the victim again. Why don't we report it? Because we are all abused. I personally have been warned if I tell, I will, end up dead or no career. I want the den mother from hell to confess why another one of her girl group girls committed suicide. Tell the public how you mentally broke us. The last tweet there is in reference to GRL, girl member Simone Battle, who would take her own life in 2014. It is speculated that a major instigator of her failing mental health was financial issues that she was suffering while in GRL. Despite the group having some success, they had some notable singles. I didn't think I knew who they were until I listened to one or two of their songs, and I realized that one of them was the theme song that Miss Remy Ashton used to use for her vlogs. And I was like, oh, I'm on vacation tonight. I'm gonna live. But yeah, that's really up. Perhaps their most popular song was Ugly Heart that came out in 2014. This tweet from Kaya is essentially the first time anyone had, as far as I'm aware, explicitly and publicly connected Simone Battle's to the way she had been treated by Robin, explicitly saying that this woman killed herself because of the way that you work and exploit girls in your girl groups, coercing them into sex, drugs, and going off the deep end. Now, this is all alleged. Of course, Robin Antin would reply in saying, no, I don't know what she's talking about. She's just doing this for her 15 minutes of fame. But as we will see, drugs does end up being a conversation quite heavily in what goes on in the later part of the Girlicious story. And also, when we talk more about kind of the things that go awry with Girlicious, I think there's a reason why so many people that enter into the industry end up doing drugs. And I don't just think it's sheer lack of willpower or a lack of morality or whatever. I think there is something structurally that exists within the industry that predates on people in general, but particularly women, to get them strung out. There's been too many instances of women saying how they enter into the industry and now they're on drugs. They're addicted. When there's smoke, there's fire. So I'm gonna just say that. Again, Robin denies that's not what happened. I did not prostitute them, blah, blah, blah. But again, I think it's undeniable that her business practices, even if we didn't enter into the other shit, was predatory in itself. That's fucked up. No one from PCD would say anything corroborating the things that Kaya said. Perhaps one factor could be that PCD will talk on and off about a reunion tour. And so maybe feeling that that may be an option in the future, people were afraid to say something. I don't know. That's a speculation. I don't know. Or maybe they just didn't agree with her. They didn't think that was true. But though they weren't getting the meteoric rise that they were promised in the Girlicious reality show, they were doing fine at this point. Again, specifically in Canada. They won a few awards. They were touring. They had Justin Bieber open for them, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Lady Gaga too. And then, before you know it, Tiffany leaves the group in 2009. There were a lot of questions, as you can imagine, swirling around why suddenly Tiffany would leave. But Tiffany would answer some of those questions in a video that she would, if I'm not mistaken, eventually delete, in which she said that Robin and the new record label they were signed to, Universal Canada, decided they were going in a different direction, a less urban direction.
You know, Robin Antin and the new label
They were looking for a new direction for the group, and they said that they were looking for the group to not be urban any longer. And, you know, I'm kind of urban, so I just didn't fit into the new puzzle that they're going to create.
AKA, we don't need a dark-skinned black woman to legitimize this as a endeavor. We're going pop, baby. She would say in the same video though, Tiffany, that it ended up being somewhat of a blessing in disguise. They were having a lot of issues anyway amongst the group, butting heads. And she would say that part of that was because there was a lot of differences in values and morals within the group, which is a little confusing because again, when people kind of say things like values and morals, they're usually referring to like overt sexuality. And again, up until this point, the whole selling point is like slutty brats. So if you have a problem with being sexy now, that's kind of weird. But then again, there was also the issues with like stupid shit that again rubbed me the wrong way. So I get it, whatever. But no, that was not the issue. Now, hindsight, I think she was talking about cocaine, cokiana, because as we will see, perhaps foreshadowed in the part that I did last time where we talked about how Robin and the industry at large is accused of pushing their artists into a life of drugs. Whatever the issues with values and morals, Tiffany wasn't into it, so she had to go. And again, we're not going urban anymore. Get this jigaboo out of it. White? You're not white?
Someone get this jigaboo away from me.
That wasn't playing a part. What is his name? Cruz. Terry Crews. Idiot. Anyway, at least that's the theory I'm gleaning from the statement about how there was just a mishmash of identities and morals. So now, Girlicious, back to the original three that it planned to be, they were now going forth with their second studio album, Rebuilt, which was going to be much more of a pop sound as opposed to like the urban R&B pop sound that they did before. Again, very Atlanta produced and inspired. It had that vibe. This was definitely more towards mainstream pop. I don't remember this album as much as I remember the other one, to be quite frank with you. It did not stay with me. I do remember the main title song, which was Maniac, what I like to refer to as an ableist bop. A problematic banger. Did nothing for mental health awareness, but did it get me singing? It did. I'm sorry. The walls are shaking and I'm paranoid. Can someone stop the noise in my head? Maniac. Okay. Along with this being an ableist bop, another thing that stuck with me, again, is remembering the fat phobia that made me feel like I couldn't see what was in front of me. They were calling this bitch Natalie fat. I hate with the passion of 100 suns. You bitches deserve jail time. 15 years old. I'm sitting there like, wow, if she's big as a house, then what the am I? Fine, you're okay. God damn it. The bitch look exactly like the other bitches, but oh, this one's fat because she has a thigh, bitch. All of y'all. But again, the song gave slutty brats on Grippy Sock vacation. Do I feel ashamed? A little. Not enough to not blow that shit in the house if it start playing. With that said, this song never reached any of the heights that the other songs or the last album reached. And it would seem that soon after the release of the second album, a lot of the cracks in the group had started to show. There were a few scandals around 2010 that would start to shake up the environment, particularly because Natalie would be arrested for possession of cocaine, cokiana. Supposedly the dude that was driving her date or the guy she was dating or whatever asked her to hold it and she put it in her purse and they got pulled over for speeding and they found a bunch of coke in her purse. So she would plead guilty for possession and was made to take a drug counseling course. Also around this time, she was rumored to be dating Chris Brown.
Rumors are you and Mr. Chris Brown are an item. Care to comment on that?
There's no comment.
This would have been not very long after the Rihanna assault. So, you know, there were choices being made. It was obviously a rough time for everyone involved, but it would just show that the group was hanging together by a thread. I would also like to mention that around this time is when more and more of the issues with PCD was coming about, and Robin was probably focusing more on them in general than she ever would focus on this group that never, again, reached the heights of Pussycat Dolls. I believe this is when I grow up, I want to be famous, I want to be a star. star, I wanna be in the movies, when that song came out. And there was just a lot of issues with the group happening. So she's not focused on Girlicious. Like, and pretty soon Natalie and Christina would just leave the group, leaving just Nicole as the sole member. For a second there, she thought that they were gonna bring new members into the group and that there would be a resurgence of some sort. But no, that's the end of the group. And so that would be pretty much the end of the 3 short years of Girlicious. But that is not the end of the story, because we have to talk about the very interesting course of events that have happened since the end of the group, because some of this did not see that coming, but now that we know in hindsight, not that weird, actually. Let's talk about after Girlicious. So after the group fell apart, Natalie and Christina at different times would be kind of scouted to join various reiterations of the Pussycat Dolls, with Nicole, without Nicole. There were different times, but basically that never really went anywhere either. The Pussycat Dolls were all but defunct at this point. They were just modeling at this point. It would particularly fall apart for Natalie because she would become pregnant, and then it would be found out that she had actually gotten secretly married and would choose to have her baby, start the family, then go forth with PCD. She would get divorced from that husband a few years later, but I believe she's gotten remarried since then and had a few more kids, so she seems to be happy. She would continue making music in various ways. She had a song that came out with her sisters called Stray that came out around like 2014. It was like a hip-hop style song, Tinashe-esque.
Keep him on a leash. Keep him on a leash. Keep him on a leash. Keep him on a leash.
It was not great. It wasn't good. And then she went forth to make her own EP, which was called LOVE, which stood for Living Off Vibrational Energy. She released a song off of that called Clumsy, which also wasn't great. And then again, around this time, she just focused on life for herself. She settled down, got remarried, had a few more kids. Last I saw, she had given her life to Christ and makes Christian inspirational music now. She just released an album in July of this year. What I've heard of it sounds better than the other stuff that she made like before with her sisters and her EP and everything, but it's still not great.
I need a resolution, need it today.
But hey, it seems like she's found a spiritual center. She seems happy from what I can tell. She seems to be finding community and fulfillment in her spirituality. Love that for her. Awesome. Nicole will attempt to join another girl group soon after this. They were going like X Factor or something, but I don't think that made much traction. And since that, she's kind of laid pretty low. Again, she was always one of the more low-key girls anyway, so she definitely is continuing to be that as far as I can tell. Not really showing up that much after they broke up. I'll put something in here if I find anything along the way while researching, but so far it's been pretty much crickets. But she probably the happiest, one of the happiest of these girls, I'd imagine, because she said, F this shit. Tiffany. So perhaps the most interesting turn of events, or one of the most interesting turn of events of people post Girlicious, is that Tiffany has become an incredibly talented painter and mixed medium artist. She goes by The Pretty Artist on Instagram, and she is a celebrity artist. She makes commissions for very famous people, and honestly, fire. I think her shit is gorgeous. I think she's way better at this than her music was. I think she's good. She's actually really good. Honestly, I would commission her, but it looked like her shit cost an arm and a leg, and I don't know how happy she would be after I just said that I think her voice is annoying. But hey, a buck is a buck, bitch. Like, hey, don't let pride hide, whatever. But she seems to be like having a real like phoenix from the ashes type moment. She was the first to get kicked out of the group, and after Girlicious, there was a moment where she had to live out of her car as she was transitioning from being a musician to a mixed medium artist. She makes a lot of stuff with like glass and stuff like that. It's very cool. One of the first celebrities she made art for, and it kind of got her some traction, was Ray J back in 2014. And since then, she seems to have been able to hone in on this passion, and it's become very successful for her. And that's really awesome. She's thriving. She made stuff for The Weeknd, Jason Derulo, Amber Rose, Dr. Dre, The Roots, Juicy J, Wiz Khalifa. Again, as far as I can see, she's the most successful girl to come out of the group. So look at her. I love it. I love a real, like, an arc, a winning arc. They threw her away for being the dark-skinned girl because they didn't need that anymore for the urban, and now she's making like gorgeous art. They threw her away because she was black and didn't want to do coke, and now she is living the dream, baby. She don't have to talk to you all she has to do is make art and send it away. That sounds awesome. Sounds like a win to me. Our last update is the one that kind of influenced this entire video, because I remember back when I still used Twitter, I had said something along the lines of like, does anybody else remember Girlicious? Because I like, every once in a while, I remember them and start bumping their stuff. And somebody was like, yeah, it's crazy what happened to Christina. And I was like, damn, she died? And no, she did not die. But she did become a far-right evangelical Christian. Oh boy.
And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children. And
Charlie Kirk was a spiritual assassin for evil.
Like I said, she was also considered to join PCD, and as they were making changes, decided in some way or another either that fell through or whatnot. She would try to crowdfund her own solo career, and she made a few things after that. And I listened to some of the songs. It wasn't too bad. It was definitely like not as polished as the Girlicious things, but it felt like a good club mix for 2011.
Night is young, let's fall for one another. Hold my hands and go. Making me feel.
You know, kind of housey, 2011. It wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. But eventually she would find Jesus, move back to LA, lose Jesus, become a go-go dancer at a gay club. And now she is an evangelical TM with a Christian channel where she tells stories of her time as a pop star and part of Girlicious, and also spreading violent, disgusting bigotry. In the name of Jesus, of course. She swung hard on that pendulum, dude. Going from the life of sex, drugs, rock and roll, and now to I hate gay people. Harmful dog whistle after harmful dog whistle. Also just outright being a bigot. Like one of the conundrums though with her having her own channel is she does give more insight into her time in Girlicious than we probably would have gotten otherwise, because again, they're a pretty obscure group and I feel like most people don't care enough to look that much into it. But me. But she's able to talk more about behind the scenes and everything that had gone on with the show and her experience as a member of Girlicious. And one of the things that she talks about is a pretty big revelation, which is that before the show even started, the Girlicious show even started, she would find out that she is pregnant. She was pregnant the entirety of the show.
It was the first month of tryouts in Los Angeles in the Hilton. They do a lot of tests. They do pregnancy tests, they do drug tests, obviously, because they want to see what they are working with. And so I was like, yeah, for sure, I'm definitely not pregnant. Like, you know, I'm on the pill, etc. Pull me aside and tell me, you know, that I am pregnant. They actually, before that, they were just like, just FYI, you still can compete. And I was like, no way, like I could still compete and I'm pregnant.
So the entire show, she's pregnant, which will explain a lot of her like kind of period brain, I guess, moments where she was just not consistent and not particularly good.
There was an episode that was shot that the storytellers on the show basically told me that I have to talk about this with your best friend Natalie. So I did, and I told her. And I, you know, basically told her that I was pregnant, and she was like, "Oh, it's okay, Chris." Like, and I think she shared something of experience, and but they never aired it. They never even made it a part of any of the Girlicious after the fact. So month goes by again. We win the show again with the 4 girls, us 4, and then I had a decision to make.
She would say that the producers, no one pressured her one way or another. Her parents, nobody pressured her one way or another to get an abortion, other than the father of the child. And she was like 19, 20 years old. How old is the father of this child? Are you gonna pay for it? Are you gonna take care of it? Also, she's 20 years old. She don't want to have no damn kid.
From Girlicious and everybody there to my own family, no one swayed me. It was, they left it to my own decision. So I was like, okay, you know, so I just decided to go through the abortion.
Now, this seems to be something that now seems to be very against or whatever. It's not my place to say, you know, you should or shouldn't regret the decision you made to have an abortion. Again, I think that's a part of the choice. But as a viewer, I'm sitting there like, that makes complete sense to me. You're 20 years old. Your dreams are right there. You don't want to have a kid, so you don't have a kid. What were you going to do? Have the kid and go on tour? Toss the kid over to your parents while you go on tour? Like, no. She would also get pregnant at a different time, which she goes into less specifics about, where she took a pill and also had an abortion. Again, this is something that she obviously feels a lot of guilt about. And I say the current day, the last video she made was give or take 3 years ago, but most recently That's what we hear. She is very open about her anti-abortion beliefs, and she's anti-everything now. Anti-abortion, anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-sex. She's a Trumper now, and it's something she feels the need to evangelize, hence the channel. And honestly, I watched a few of her videos, you know, and it's depressing and harmful. And none of the videos got much traction. Honestly, I'm probably one of 150 people that have probably seen a lot of these videos, but still depressing. Like, the entire channel, to me, I read as just her beating herself up for being a person.
It's one of the biggest regrets of my life, of aborting my child, and I will never forget it. And but I did it.
Like, she's anti-gay, and in the moments she's talking about gayness, she's basically beating herself up for having attraction to women, which she's very vague about, kind of vague conversations about her own sexuality. Also, there was the whole taking a bath with Natalie. But it's giving SSA for the "my husband's not gay" video, like same-sex attracted, but I'm not gay because I don't live the gay life stuff. It's beating herself up about that. It's beating herself up about having suicidal ideations because you didn't believe in Jesus enough or whatever. At the time of her making this channel, it was very much so that her entire internet presence, if not her entire life, has this rigidity around being the right person. Again, to compare, Natalie has a pretty strong center in Christianity, and I don't have any issues with people deciding to be a religious person, but she also seems to be still a person. Like, she dresses up, she dances, she has fun, while also making Christian music, if that's what she so chooses. But Christina has this, like, it feels like so much guilt and so much penance she's trying to make. And yes, she is a bigot. She is a bigot. There's no denying that. It's almost hard for me to have space or capacity to be upset with her outlandish shit that she says, because again, I don't think that many people watched it. But also, she just seems lost to me. Honestly, she seemed lost in the Girlicious times as well. She seemed lost after Girlicious. She seemed just lost. And I do find that right-wing pipelines tend to appeal to people who are just like floating in the ether. It just feels like another way to perform, another group of people who would perhaps be somewhat interested in her anti-black, anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-sex, anti-everything rhetoric. And since her becoming loud and awful, she has supposedly lost a lot of friends and family and people that just don't want to be associated with that shit. As I understand it, the other members of Girlicious have like unfollowed her on things. They don't want to associate with her bullshit, and I don't blame them.
I have lost quite a few people in my life because of following Jesus Christ. But they're not really hating me. What they're really doing is hating Jesus, right?
It's been a few years since she's been consistent on the Christian channel. I did see some posts on her Instagram semi-recently that were very like, Trump is leading us to the light, or whatever the fuck. There was a moment she was engaged for a second a few years back, and then that ended. She did a video on it. I don't care. And as for Robin, though not a member, she's still certainly around. A few years ago, her and Nicole Scherzinger got into a suing battle over the PCD reunion tour from 2020 that didn't happen. And that's really long and contrived. And I feel like I've been talking about this for a very long time. So I'm gonna I'm assume it's Robin's fault. I just don't like the bitch and I think it's her fault. Conclusion. With that ends the multi-layered saga of a little-known group by the name of Girlicious that shaped a sizable part of my late middle school, early high school years. And it's perhaps a completely unknown or a very minor blip in your memory, but regardless, as with any rabbit hole, it was fun bringing you all down with me. Regardless of how niche it is. With that said, I wish nothing but the best for the girls. Even Christina, because again, bitch do seem too far gone. I ain't gonna lie to you. She strikes me as an all or nothing, 0 to 100 type of bitch. So she gonna be there for a while. She gonna be there for the foreseeable future, but it's unfortunate and sad. But with that said, I hope for the best for everybody, except Robin. Robin sucks. she sucks ass, all right? Girl power. Like, girl, no, you're a exploitative capitalist like all the rest of them motherfuckers. If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on my social media, Instagram and Bluesky, both of which are KennieJD. Do you have any thoughts about today's video? Put them down in the comment section. I want to know. Did you know who Girlicious was? What was your favorite Girlicious song? I don't know what my favorite is. I guess Baby Doll, but they had so many bangers that first album. I don't know. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Spins it, drop it like a Cadillac. Ow, my shoulder.